Hey everyone. Remember the last video I did where I talked about every movie I watched in July and reviewed it in a minute or less? Well, I'm doing that again. This time with movies in August. Same rules apply. We're not going to be talking about any movies that I saw in theaters. These are all just movies that I watched at home. I turned on my TV and watched all throughout the month of August. And this will be my honest review about it in 1 minute or less. If I go past 1 minute, you can yell at me all you want, but I'll try my best to keep them at a minimum of 1 minute. So, let's take a look. Minimum? I get minimum and maximum mixed up, so maximum of 1 minute. I'll try to keep it at a maximum of 1 minute. Hey, now let's take a look. Due Date is not a good movie in my opinion, mainly because it's a ripoff. It's a movie about a guy who has to get home to his family in time, but gets stuck on the road with a very annoying dude. Does that sound familiar? Yeah, this movie rips off the famous classic comedy Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. I know what you're thinking, maybe it's not a ripoff, maybe it's just like an inspiration or something. Well, unfortunately, in my opinion, if your movie isn't a sequel or a remake, then it's a ripoff. That's just what I think. The film is directed by Todd Phillips of Hangover fame and stars Robert Downey Jr. and Zach Galifianakis, who pretty much just act like the roles they've had previously. Like, Robert's character acts so much like Tony Stark, and Zach's character acts so much like whatever the name is of who he played in Hangover. I think the problem with this movie is that it's not very funny. There's not many fun moments to it, and again, it's just feels like a Planes, Trains, and Automobiles ripoff. That movie's good. This one's not so much. Now, Braveheart is considered a timeless masterpiece by some. In my opinion, I personally don't think so. I mean, it's not bad. It's good. It's okay. But just not really anything that exciting. My problem with Braveheart is that it doesn't really do much excitement towards me. I mean, it has a good performance by Mel, but that performance just kind of lacks throughout the entire story. The story doesn't feel inconsistent. It feels very historically inaccurate, which something a lot of people would say. And it just doesn't feel as exciting as it's been praised as. Yeah, I know, maybe I'm just all too used to modern CG action, but I don't know. This movie just didn't excite me as much as I felt it should. Maybe I'm just supposed to focus on what it's historically based, but again, the movie just has a lot of historical inaccuracy, so it just comes off as kind of under the radar. It's alright, just nothing that great. Now this movie I love. In The Light on the Fire from good old Clint Eastwood talks about the story of a man who's so traumatized over the death of JFK and wants to try and prevent another incident like that from happening. The whole story revolves around him trying his hardest to be as good of a cop as he can. I think the story really works because it does do a good job at giving us some of that accuracy towards how scared some cops would be at keeping future presidents safe. This movie really does portray Clint Eastwood as a fun, likable character. That's what I like about these kind of movies, making the character someone you hardly can find anything wrong with. That's what I think of this character in this movie. The movie just has a lot of good fun with this guy. You know, you don't feel like there's much you can complain about. Everything he does makes sense. Everything he feels, you would understand. I understand this guy, and honestly, that's just what makes this movie so good to me. He's a character that you definitely want to root for. Good old Quentin Tarantino and his nonsense of homages. Inglourious Bastards tells the story of a alternate take of the Germany of the 40s, World War II style, Hitler and all that. There actually wasn't too much I can get out of this movie I can remember other than it kind of mocking the whole World War II Germany nonsense. That's mostly what I got out of this movie. I like the fun they brought me. The fun in this movie comes from how ridiculous some moments are, or how intense some moments can get. A lot of it comes from how different it is to what your usual German history film would have. This one takes a new type of approach. Now, maybe I wouldn't call it too exciting like other people. Like, people like my dad say this is the best of Quentin. In my opinion, it's good. It's definitely one of his best work. But in my opinion, maybe it could have had a bit more story towards it. Regardless, though, even if I didn't get much story out of it, I still had fun. And it definitely still did well with what it was telling. Here's something you know is ridiculous. Bruno, starring the hilarious Sacha Baron Cohen, is about a gay boy. Yep, Sacha Baron Cohen plays a very flamboyant gay dude who practically spends his whole movie acting like Borat, except he's gay. That's kind of like all of it. The movie has tons of gross and weird moments in it, and honestly, maybe too much. But even if it is filled with too many gross moments that would ruin it, there are still some of that good Borat style. Baron Cohen is definitely one of the funniest actors of our generation, having so much fun being as inappropriate, insensitive, and very racist or downright offensive towards everyone. He's like some of the best of offensive you can get. I love seeing how offensive he can be in these movies. He makes for some fun. So even if this movie isn't as funny as it should be, it still provides some good stuff, just not enough to make it necessary. Another Mad Max film down the line, Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, is another typical Mad Max movie. Again, I like this Mad Max movie as much as I like the other two Mad Max films. I'm really trying to get into these films. And they're good, but again, I like it about as much. And as much, the first two Mad Max movies are good. They aren't amazing. There's a lot of cheesiness or kind of randomness towards them. But still, I like these movies for what they do. Mad Max is definitely a fun little franchise for those into that post-apocalypse road stuff. And I'll definitely make sure to check out some more in the future, because I still need to watch Fury Road, which is considered the best of the franchise. And then I'll be caught with the Mad Max movies, and who knows, maybe I'll love Fury Road more than I like these movies. But I'll have to wait and see. For now, I like Beyond Thunderdome as much as I like the other two Mad Max films. All three in total make for some good, even if not amazing, movies. Ironically, watching this the first day I started college, except it is a fun 2000s comedy about a guy who creates his own college, has a bunch of random slackers join, and do his own stuff. This movie is a little just one of those fun, typical comedies, starring Justin Long and a pretty young Jonah Hill. Yeah, that's kind of what I got of this movie, Jonah Hill being young. He definitely is the best part. Except that this is as good of a 2000s comedy as they can get. But again, the irony that I choose to watch this on the day I first started my college year, except it does make for some pretty fun moments. Again, most of the comedy comes from Jonah Hill's character. I mean, he makes every movie he's in funny. So, yeah, we can pretty much thank him for making this movie as good as it is. But for the most part, it has some fun to it. It's a fun story about a bunch of kids who want to succeed, so they just create their own college and do their own stuff. It's mostly that kind of thing. It's just mostly hiding from your parents for an hour and a half, but it's fun. The classic Saving Private Ryan. This movie is often cited as one of the greatest ever. And while I personally wouldn't call it one of my all-time favorites as much as I hoped, it's still a great movie. Saving Private Ryan is a collaboration between two of my all-time favorites, Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks. These two going hand in hand should make her some awesome stuff. And even though so far this has been their best work, even if it haven't been calling it one of my all-time favorites, I think it's still a great piece to talk about. Saving Private Ryan has a lot of great stuff to it. A lot of good emotion, a lot of good depth, and definitely some great performances from these characters. This movie really does a good job at telling its story. So maybe I didn't like it as much as I was hoping. I still loved it. And I still think if you're a fan of Steven Spielberg or Tom Hanks, or if you're just a fan of movies in general, you know this movie is something you have to watch. It better be on your bucket list, otherwise you have not seen every movie you should. A little fun British comedy. The Full Monty is a British weird nude comedy about a bunch of guys who are practically as weird as you can get. Yeah, this is another film I can't really explain the whole plot to very well. I just remember it being all weird and such. The Full Monty has a bunch of wacky, awkward moments, but it's the fun kind of awkward that you can expect from a British comedy. I like British comedies because they provide for some pretty awkward stuff, but most of the awkward stuff is stuff that you really do enjoy. It's that awkwardness that you like to get an enjoyment out of. So even if some moments make you feel uncomfortable, you're still having a good time with the experience. Or at least that's what I think. Full Monty is fun. It has good funny moments, and for the most part, it's about as awkward and weird of a British comedy as you can get. It's no Monty Python, despite the Monty, but it's still fun. A good old action film, Lethal Weapon, starring Mel Gibson and Danny Glover. Lethal Weapon is considered one of the most iconic action movies of the 80s. And yeah, I can see why. It's pretty cool. Lethal Weapon is fun, but at the same time, Mel Gibson is at his all-time craziest in this movie. I personally think this is probably Mel Gibson's most ridiculous role. Okay, maybe I haven't seen every film of his. I should probably wait before I say that, but from what I've seen, this is definitely his most over-the-top and sometimes pretty funny kind of role. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but he really provides a pretty over-the-top performance. Lethal Weapon is pretty fun. It's can get pretty silly or sometimes pretty underwhelming some points, but for the most part, I definitely think this movie is a must-watch for those action lovers. If you're a fan of action movies, you know Lethal Weapon's on your watch list. It's certainly everything you want from an 80s action film. Oh, this classic, Collateral. Tom Cruise is actually, I'm just going to say it right now, for those who haven't seen it, is not the main character. He's the antagonist. I'm not used to seeing Tom Cruise as an antagonist, so this is pretty awesome. This movie's awesome. It tells the story of a cab driver, played by Jamie Foxx, who becomes a hostage by Tom Cruise, who keeps him hostage, holds him, and practically has him go through the whole night as a hostage throughout a whole taxi driving experience. What makes this movie so great to me is the fun interactions we get between Cruise and Fox, as well as some of the fun moments in between. Moments where Cruise goes all out, moments where they actually start bonding, moments where they get some serious stuff, and of course the moments where Tom Cruise has to run. Seriously. It's not a Tom Cruise movie without him running. That's a guaranteed law. But so yeah, Collateral is a lot of fun, and definitely worth the time for all those Tom Cruise lovers. Another fun film from Quentin Tarantino, Jackie Brown, is a story about a bunch of it. It's about this woman who seems to be questioned by a lot. Starring Samuel L. Jackson in another Quentin film, Robert De Niro in this movie, there's Michael Keaton. It's a pretty interesting cast. Jackie Brown is just another one of those all over the place Quentin films. So again, I can't really say I can explain the whole story very well. It's mostly just a bunch of randomness between these characters. Each character provides some pretty good stuff. They all have some good performances and all do portray themselves pretty well. So I can definitely say this movie is a guaranteed watch for everyone who's a good fan of Quentin's work. I definitely think Quentin Tarantino is an interesting director, and even if I can't call all of his movies great, they are worth the watch. So I'll definitely keep checking out more films that he makes soon enough. And the last movie today, City Slickers, starring Billy Crystal, Daniel Stern, and Bruno Kirby. It's okay. It's a comedy about these guys who take a vacation living like a bunch of westerns. I was thinking this is going to be a spoof of westerns, sort of like Blazing Saddles, but instead it's kind of more of a normal comedy where they take a vacation to the west. So it may not be as exciting as I hoped, but still fun. Billy Crystal is a pretty funny guy. Also, this movie features a 10-year-old Jake Gyllenhaal who was really young at the time, and you could probably recognize him, just he's really young, so I got that out of this movie. It's okay. It's got a few fun stuff. Again, Billy Crystal's a pretty funny guy, so I think if you like Billy Crystal's stuff, this movie is guaranteed to be watched, because Billy Crystal makes for some pretty good stuff. Alright, so next video is going to be every movie I saw in September. I know. I'm getting lazy here, but that's just what I'm going to do. After that, I will start making some more top 10s, because then I'll be caught up. But yeah, next video, September.